Good morning, swimmers and coaches right around the world. Paul Newsome here from Swim Smooth. Today we're down at the beautiful freshwater bay here in Peppermint Grove in Western Australia. We've been lucky now for about the last 10 days or so that we've been able to go back to some structured open water coaching. We're not allowed back in the pools just yet, although that might be changing in the next week or so. So what we've decided to do was, abiding by social distancing laws, which permit us at the moment to have maximum groups of 10 people, we've decided to run a session down here every morning. We're doing a set at 6:45, a session at 8:15 and a session at 9:30. We've got 3 coaches working with us, so myself, Sally and Ross, each of us working with 9 swimmers. So on a given morning at 6:45, we can have 27 swimmers down here in this beautiful river, the Swan River. 8:15, myself and Sally will work on that, 9:30, myself and Sally, so we're just reduced down to 18 swimmers. But it's a big start. It's allowing us to get through around about 60 swimmers per day. We've averaged out last week at around about 211 swimmers over the course of the week, which is a really good start. It compares favourably, I guess, with our pool swimming, around about 320 at this time of year. So 211, and given the fact that we haven't got any lane fee costs or anything like that, it's all pretty good stuff. Now, you might not be out of lockdown yet, but what I wanted to do with you today was share our Swim Smooth guide to open water swimming in the COVID crisis. So first thing to obviously bear in mind is the fact that you are going to be restricted, at least initially, with the number of people you can have along to your sessions. So in the past, I might have run an open water session all by myself for 25, 30 swimmers or what have you, but now we're restricted down to these smaller groups. Obviously, the standard of quality in coaching is much greater for the swimmers, so they're really appreciative of being able to be in that small group and giving them that information. So this morning we're doing some turning practice. There we go, Byron just flicking over onto his back and then back onto his front. Josie doing it perfectly. Just allows them to get this nice tight turn around the buoys. We're doing a transition swim this morning, so longer intervals of around about 450 metres. So basically taking the swimmers from one end of the bay to the other, and then these short, sharp intervals. Doing some turning practice right now. We've been doing some drafting practice, some short, sharp power intervals, just to break things up. There comes Byron here, powering through. Nice work, mate. Good job. Feeling good?
Yep.
Yep. Well done, Josie. Well done, Ben. Good turning there, Josie, actually. Some fantastic turns. All right, let's wait for these guys to come in. We're going to reverse the direction now. Now, as you can see in this bay here, we've got a distance from the 2 extremes, if you like, of around about 400 metres. So what we've arranged is, through our app booking system, people can book in, 27 people can book in for the 6:45 a.m. session. At around about 8 p.m. on the night before the session, what I'll do is I'll actually release 3 groups of 9. So I take the data from the app booking system and work out who would be in group 1, our fastest group, who would be in group 2, and who would be in group 3. Now, one of the things that this whole COVID thing has forced us to do is to obviously engage our swimmers in a much greater way. What we've done over the past couple of weeks is we've made sure that we've got everybody onto our WhatsApp group. Now, not a lot of people like to be on WhatsApp, you know, with messages binging back all over in the place, but what you can do is you can actually set up a WhatsApp group so that only you, as the coach, can post out to your swimmers. So I'm using this just purely as an information. What I'll do is actually just post out and say, okay, these are our groups tomorrow morning. This is what the weather's going to be like, and this is where we're going to be meeting. So abiding by social distancing laws has meant that we've been able to go through using something like this little red flag here, is we send out a map and say, okay, Sally's group's going to be down at this corner, I'm going to be here underneath the big fig tree, Ross is going to be down there by the pine tree there. We stick the little flags in the ground, we encourage people to only rock up just before the start of the session, and then we start off with the safety briefing. Now, this session, like I say, it's been going for around about 10 days now, so we've done probably about 20 sessions in total, and then we're always developing them. On the very first session, we decided to coach from the beach. It was a very strong easterly wind, and this beach itself is totally protected. So we are on a river, but we've got this beautiful beach, and it's protected from winds in every direction apart from easterly. And as it would happen, Murphy's Law, on that first morning, it was whipping a very, very strong easterly. So it was quite choppy on the river. Any instruction we were actually sending out, if you can imagine, our speech was almost getting blown back in our faces. Because we want to be sort of respective of the local community here, we don't want to use our voice system. So normally on the pool deck, I'll use a PA system to throw my voice a little bit. we want to try and keep it nice and quiet here. So we didn't use that on that first morning. I was shouting out to the swimmers. They weren't really able to hear us that well. It was blowing back. And plus, it also happened to be really shallow that morning as well. So you imagine trying to coach in the pool where you're stood at one end of the pool, but all your swimmers are at the other end of a 25-metre pool. That's a little bit like it was like on that first morning. So now, what myself and Sally and Ross do is we take out the paddle boards. I've got an inflatable paddle board here. This one's pretty good actually, so it allows me to actually stand up on it. I've got the oar, or the paddle here, which is extendable very easily if I want to stand up on it. But equally, I've got a little seat as well, which I can actually sit down and switch over to almost like a kayak paddle, so actually be kayaking alongside the swimmers. Obviously, that helps with our communication significantly. The reason we didn't do it on that first morning is we were actually testing a new communication system, and you might want to sort of download this app and have a look at yourself. It's called Zello, Z-E-L-L-O.
Come in, coaches. This is Paul. I'm about to head into the water with my group, leaving the beach now. Come in, coaches. This is Paul. I'm about to head into the water with my group, leaving the beach now.
What this allows us to do is, rather than actually carrying a specific two-way radio system between the three of us, which we thought was going to be a bit bulky, we've just got our iPhones, and given the fact that they're waterproof, we feel comfortable taking them out there. Zello is an app which works like a two-way radio. So even though we were split out at over 400 meters, on that first morning especially, we were able to have great communication. So we were sort of saying, okay, Sally, your group is coming around now, Ross, your group is coming around, etc. So the second part of organising this is to then predetermine some ideal routes. We have one big perimeter loop which we warm up with pretty much every morning. It goes for 900 metres. Now, as we've got all these buoys and boats all moored out here, we don't have to do the full 900. We can sort of change that on the morning. Typically, we've been going about 500 or 600 metres. Between the three coaches, we always know that we're going to go in one direction. So we have a little bit of a team meeting before we start. We're always going around in this anti-clockwise direction. So the three groups, typically the fastest group is set off in that far corner. So they're always leading. The middle group is here underneath the fig tree, and then just behind me over here, the palm tree is where the slower group will set off from. We try to make sure that we're all in the water at the same time. So that's not just the three groups, but when you've got the 9 swimmers, trying to get them into the water so everybody's ready to rock and roll straight away. So when you set off and you're paddling alongside, if you've got a group of similar speeds, you're all staying together for that safety element, of course. So we take it around in this anti-clockwise direction, we come back, and then we set up some courses. Now, it's very easy down here to set up the courses using the marker buoys. So we have these yellow marker buoys out in the water. These are permanent moorings. If you bump into them, they can be quite painful. So we need to obviously advise people not to bump into them. So what we've actually been doing to actually mark them out is going along with some of these flags and actually sticking them over the top of the buoys. So when we say to the swimmers, we're going to swim around this triangular course and it's 300 meters, the drama that we had initially was when you say, look out at all those buoys, we're going to swim around that yellow buoy, and everyone looks at them, there's 50 yellow buoys out there. We're now just draping these flags over the top of one of those buoys and removing them afterwards, but it's making that whole process that much better. The water temperature in here right now is about 17 or 18 degrees Celsius, so we're recommending that everybody is wearing a wetsuit. Some people don't, some people opt not to, but obviously from a safety perspective, even the flotation of a wetsuit really just ensures the safety of the entire group. So as the water temperature for us here starts to dip down, obviously if you're in the northern hemisphere, it's going to be coming up at the moment. It just helps us to sort of keep track of everybody and make sure that everybody is all right, because obviously safety is of paramount importance. Now let's talk specifically about safety and what we've done with that. We have a few things. We have a group of 9 setting off together, and we have 2 or 3 of these swim secure buoys. If you've never seen these before, they're like tow floats. I've never been a fan of using something like this because my assumption was that if you're towing that behind you, you know, it's a buoyant thing, but if you're towing that behind you, you just assume it's going to create drag. We've done a test with our fastest swimmer down here over a 5-minute loop, and the drag that this created was just 3 seconds. So dispel that myth about tow floats not being good. If you've got a tow float for everybody, that's fantastic. But what we tend to do is we tend to buddy people up. So of that group of 9, we'll have 3 groups of 3, one of whom will have the tow float on, and the other 2 swimmers will just be encouraged to stay with that tow float. It's only really an important problem on the warm-up lap, because the warm-up lap's a bit bigger, chance to actually sort of split out a little bit more. Sometimes the swimmers actually remove the tow float for when we do the shorter intervals, just so they haven't got any drag at all. But what we also have as well, we have one big bag here. Firstly, first aid box, and also with the resuscitation and CPR. So what I've actually told everybody is I've told the swimmers exactly where we would find our closest defibrillator. Over here in Australia, we have a fantastic system which allows you just on an app to sort of find the closest defibrillator. Obviously, we're hoping it won't come to that. We don't want anybody in that sort of degree of stress, of course, and of course, the first port of call would be if somebody was in that sort of distress is to deal with them on the beach and then contact the ambulance. But it's always useful just to know if you have to send a first responder off to go and get something, then we can do that. So first aid box first and foremost. We also have this air horn. Now again, you wouldn't want to be waking up the neighbours with this, but our encouragement is that 3 blasts on the air horn encourages or signifies an evacuation of the water for everybody. If they can't hear that, or if we can't get to this quickly enough, all of the coaches have a whistle, and they will actually blow that whistle sharply, continuously, until everybody starts to clear the water. Because everybody knows this emergency action plan, and we encourage all the coaches to sort of go through it just quickly, 2 or 3 minutes before we start each time. Everybody knows what the situation is. So when we go in, final thing within this bag here is a few emergency blankets here. So if anybody gets cold, we can wrap them up, etc. And this stays on the beach with the sign here, so all the coaches, all the swimmers know where they need to go if they need to get out of the water. So that's almost like our meeting point, if you like. Now, the other thing to add to that is we're using standard safety sort of signals. If anybody's in any drama, we get them to wave with their left hand. If somebody's okay, but you've shouted over to them and said, hey, are you all right? And they are okay, the standard thing is for them to shout, yes, I'm okay. Sometimes you can't hear that. They might go thumbs up, but sometimes it's hard to discern between this and maybe this. So the standard practice, if you're okay, is to pop your hand on your head. So all the swimmers in the squad know this. So let's now talk a little bit about the type of sessions which we're doing down here. So if you're a solo swimmer, maybe you can structure things. What's happened here in Perth over the last few weeks is that, or say few weeks, time is like a time warp at the moment. The first 6 weeks of our lockdown, as it were, we were still able to swim in the oceans and rivers. And many people were meeting in small groups of 2 or 3 people within range of the regulations. So swimming within those small groups and basically just swimming up and down the coast. They might get in for 2 or 3 kilometres. So everything was slow and steady. The advice from the government was to keep your heart rate low. Exercise is good, of course, for cardiovascular fitness, and it's also good for helping boost your immune system. But what we wanted to avoid in those first stages is not taking your heart rate too high, and making sure we're just sort of keeping it nice and steady. So for the first 6 weeks, that worked really well. But as you probably appreciate, if you were just to go out for a bike ride every day, or just go out for a run every day and just do the same thing over and over again, it can get quite boring. So what we've determined here with these sessions is that these sessions need to be very, very different from what people would otherwise want to do on their own. Otherwise, they're just not going to see any value in coming, trying and joining in with the squad. And as I mentioned, last week we had 211 swimmers come and join us over the course of the week. So we think of that as a little bit of a win, an idea that we're getting some traction with this. So what do these sessions look like? Well, like I say, we start off with this warm-up, we make sure everyone stays together, we've had that little bit of a debrief beforehand. The sessions themselves, we're actually restricting to around about 45 minutes. Occasionally we go a little bit longer than that. Our standard pool session's around about an hour, but we're conscious that A, people have lost a lot of fitness during this period, and B, the water temperature is getting a little bit cold. I much prefer people to get out after having had a really good solid session, not being too cold, feel like they've still got some energy in the tank to fight the rest of the day, as it were, and everything else is going on at the moment, as opposed to leaving them completely depleted after one of these sessions. But that's not to say that these sessions aren't challenging. So on my paddleboard, I will have my safety jacket on. So all of us wear these high-vis jackets. When we start at 6:45 in the morning, the sun's just coming up. We can't start any earlier than that at the moment. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, you might be able to get started with some of your sessions a little bit sooner, as and when regulations allow. So in order to structure things, what we'll do is we'll go around the course, we'll use flags to highlight maybe a triangle. So just looping these over the yellow buoys to maybe make a triangle. We'll instruct the swimmers typically to swim around that course, then using an app on the phone, a stopwatch app, with those 9 swimmers, we'll just time each one of them how long it takes to get around that loop. So you might think to yourself, okay, that looks like about 300 meters. It might take these swimmers about 5 minutes to get around. Time them all around, and then one of the sets that we've been doing, and you can do this obviously if you think about it over any distance. So the distance, the triangular course that you might make, it might be 100 meters, might be 150, 200, 250, 300, whatever. I'd strongly encourage you to keep those distances though within around about 300 meters. Otherwise, if you're the point of contact floating on the boat, you're going to start to lose some visibility. Certainly we would here with all the boats moored up. If you're on an open lake, you might be able to expand those distances out a little bit further. The nice thing with these moorings is these moorings is that we don't need to actually go into the water and actually put them out in the morning. We just need to actually loop the orange flag over. So the tempo trainer used in mode 2. Obviously here at SwimSmooth we talk a lot about CSS training, and if you've used a tempo trainer in the pool under our guidance, you've probably had it set to beep every 25 meters. So let's say your threshold pace is 140 per 100, we'd have probably told you to use mode 1 at 25.00 and make sure that every time you're turning at 25 meters, the beep is going. The nice thing with mode 1 is accurate to 1/100th of a second, but we haven't got anywhere near that degree of precision out here in the open water. So use mode 2. Let's say, for example, someone goes around this course and it takes them 5 minutes and 3 seconds to go round. Use mode 2, set it to 5 minutes and 3 seconds, and then all the swimmer's got to do with the tempo trainer here, so let me just show you that, there we go, 5 minutes and 3 seconds, is just pop this underneath the swimming cap, and when they're ready to set off, they just press that top button, they'll hear a beep beep beep, and that's their cue to then set off around the course. Now they're not going to hear any other audible beeps until 5 minutes and 3 seconds has elapsed, but their challenge, and this is where you can be different than what they might be doing when they're plodding up and down in the open water by themselves, their challenge is to be back at the starting point by the time the beeper goes. And you can take this and expand it many, many ways. Different intervals, different number of repetitions, getting them to start off at a fairly steady pace and then reducing it down. I've just done that set myself actually. So we've done about 4 or 5 times 300 meters and each time just taking 5 seconds off the beep. So I have to try and beat it. Luckily this morning I was obviously in good form because I managed to do that, but it just provides a little bit of a challenge. Another way you can use a tempo trainer to structure your open water sessions is to pop it into mode 3. And to ascertain for each of your swimmers, or if you're swimming by yourself, ascertain what your stroke rate is. So let's say the swimmer's natural stroke rate is about 68 strokes per minute. Let's see if we can hear that. Just a constant beep, beep, beep. You can then set them off at 68 strokes per minute, just making sure the hand is going into the water on each stroke. Beep, 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 beep. And again, you can do a little bit of a ramp test. So you might decide that today we're going to ramp things up. So starting off at the base rate, let's ramp up, let's do this 100-meter loop and then ramp up by 2 strokes per minute, 100 meters ramp up by 2. You might go up by about 10 in total and then come back down again. You might finish off with a cool down lap where you drop off 10 strokes per minute. And you encourage the swimmers, look, whilst we haven't got the higher tempo to keep the rhythm going, we're going to stretch out a little bit more, but rather than trying to glide our way through that, we're just going to think about our catch and pulling through. And we've been able to do some really solid technique focus down here in the open water, again to add value and benefit to the swimmers within the squad. So if you are a coach contemplating doing some open water sessions, there's many myriad ways you can actually work with the tempo trainer to help with that. A couple of other little things that we do. So we might do like a threshold set. Again, we might identify a course of, let's say, 200 meters. The swimmers might do 3 times 200 meters as we did last week. And then with the section just slightly off to one side, we do 4 times 50 meter pickups before we then go back into 3 times 200 meters or whatever distance you decide. The thing you've got to be careful about here, people always say, well, what does my rest recovery period? I'm always a little bit loose in the open water about that. I might say about 15 seconds, but if you see people starting to get cold, then obviously they need to reduce that down a little bit. And equally, one thing to remember, shuttles, so 50 meters out and back, can become quite dangerous. If you think about a group of 9 split up over different speeds, eventually you're going to start to have these head-on collisions. So I'd always encourage you, even if you're doing a very short interval like 30 meters, 50 meters, to still try to identify a bit of a triangle. So it might be a long, thin triangle, but just something to take the swimmer out and around before coming straight back to that point there. But yeah, there we go. So many myriad things you can do in the open water. We need to be mindful about social distancing. Drafting on somebody's toes around about 50 centimetres behind them would probably just be within that 1.5 metre restriction we've got here. Swimming side by side, we probably need to get out a little bit wider and make sure we're just sort of observing that. And of course, when you're meeting, everyone's being very cognizant of that fact of making sure they're actually just standing 1.5 to 2 metres apart as well. But the good news is this is working really, really well for us over here in Western Australia. You might be 2 or 3 weeks behind, you might be a couple of months behind. Chances are though, wherever you are in the world, if things are going to open up for you, it's going to happen in the open water way before it happens in the pool. As we get into the pool next week, hopefully, we've got a restriction of 20 people maximum in the entire pool. Massive 50-metre Olympic-sized pool, 20 people. It's just not going to work from a viable financial perspective for us running these sessions. We're able to get 27 people down here in the open water. We're able to do it safely. They're able to have a really good, fun, structured session. And as coaches, we're able to start to recoup our small business and make sure that we're getting ourselves back on track. So I'm hoping some of what I've talked to you about there today is going to be quite beneficial for you. Give it a try. Always, always, always have at the very top of your paradigm this idea of safety, of course. Most people conscientiously do that, but just take the time to lay out a course. Take the time to communicate with the swimmers via a WhatsApp channel of which group they're going to be in, where their meeting point is going to be. Get Google Earth, download it. There's a great little measuring tool on there where you can actually measure out some courses so people have a general idea of where they're going to be, and then just come and do it. The great thing with the WhatsApp group, especially with transient weather as we have down here. Last week we had a massive storm come through, so we had to cancel it at short notice. People are going to be aware that that's going to be the case. That's very much the nature of open water swimming. If you haven't got that communication pathway opened up through WhatsApp or something similar to that, then you're going to really struggle. So you're going to need to get to the computer, email out, no one's going to check it, all these sort of things. So now is a really good time to get people onto things like WhatsApp, even doing Zoom calls, etc. People are open to doing that. Don't be afraid to sort of say, hey, and I almost insist that they need to do that, because if you need to cancel things at short notice, it's a very, very easy way of doing that, and then no one's going to get put out. So I'm hoping you really enjoyed the Swim Smooth guide to open water training. We'll probably follow up with some more sessions and ideas and etc. But I think the real thing with open water swimming is just like it's very, very changeable. So too do you need to be very changeable with and flexible with your session ideas. So I'll come down here in the morning and the first thing I'll do is I'll just look at the conditions, I'll look at the course, we'll have a debrief with the coaches, we'll decide what is probably going to work best, and then we'll just make up the session from there. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to have some idea of what you're going to do, but then ultimately leave it to the morning or the afternoon or whenever you're doing your session to actually see what would suit my swimmers best based on the conditions. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel down below. We'd really appreciate your support and a few likes and thumbs up. Thanks very much. All right, everyone, do we have a message there for Andrew Graham? We've just done his set that he recommended and then didn't show up for.
Where were you?
Where were you?
We practiced it, Andrew. It'll be right for you when you come down.
So Andrew, we did these longer intervals as you asked for, shifting direction all over the river, so we've been from one end to the other this morning.
Where the bloody hell are you?